Today on the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, Moonknight Episode 2 is here. Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. My name is Matthew Carroll.
My name is Brian V. Klein.
Brian, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing excellent. You know, another great episode of Moon Knight we get to discuss and just rip roaring ready to go.
Dude, 100%. I love this episode. First off, let me publicly apologize to you because you
I'm listening.
Actually stayed up and did the thing, Midnight Moon Night, and I had to. I couldn't stay up, so I set my alarm, and I just didn't wake up. I slept straight through Midnight Moon Night. So this is not a Midnight Moon Night, unfortunately. This is next day Moon Night. This is a next day air Moon Night or whatever. So I very much apologize for missing that last night, and especially that you stayed up and I completely whiffed it.
Well, I woke up at 10 to 2, but I had two different alarms going off, and the one of them didn't go off, but that was because the second one, I guess I already had, so I might have accidentally turned it off, but always have a backup, you know.
Well,
so,
I had three alarms set and apparently slept through all three. So I'm right there with you. I had a backup. I was ready to go, and I just apparently was that tired. It's been a tough week, but
sometimes you just can't help it. But yeah, that's fine. I was up anyway, so I watched it and couldn't go fall back asleep afterwards. So
yeah, it's a great episode, man. Well, let's get into it. What'd you think of the second episode?
First off, I want to say that I was pleasantly surprised that what a lot of people were thinking was going to happen, and we actually kind of talked about it last week, was that we didn't see the events of episode 1 from Mark's perspective at first, because we don't really need to know the ins and outs. We're sort of feeling him out as far as, we found out a lot more this episode of the control factor of the two people and how it works now. But other than that, I mean, I scared the crap out of my dog when Mr. Knight showed up, when he summoned the suit, but the wrong one. And I'm like, it's Mr. Knight!
Oh, it's so good.
He jumped up. But there's just so much to talk about. And I'm glad we had probably a little bit more time than the 15, 20 minutes we would have if we were talking in the 3 a.m. So
yes. Yeah, that's true. I'm
happy.
Can't complain about that. I agree with you completely. This episode is so much fun, and I think it's so good that they didn't go back. I had really liked the idea of them doing something with playing with time and showing us some things that we haven't seen from other perspectives, either from a different alternate or from Mark's perspective or whatever. But I think this was way better just to keep it moving. Keeps the story moving, keeps us this has happened. Now we are still with Steven. It's still his story right now. But Mark really came into it in a real way this episode. We got to know him as an alternate, and we got to know Khonshu a little bit, and Arthur, Harrow. Is that right?
Yeah, Arthur Harrow, the current avatar of Amit and the former avatar of Khonshu. So that was a nice revelation too.
Yeah, huge. And man, I love it. I love it so much. Those of you who listen to me podcast know that I absolutely love a moral decision to be made. And when characters are really given a choice, it's laid out and they have to think through it. And I love this Minority Report, basically storyline that they've given for Steven to really have to decide, listen, Amit wants to stop evil. They make it sound so good, but Steven logics his way through it, and he's like, what about children? I have to draw a line there, it's so good. It's so smart and cool, and it's Minority Report just sort of in the background of this other story, and I love it.
I actually have that written down in my notes. I got Minority Report, prejudging people, and a thought isn't evil, because he even said it. He goes, I think about killing my boss, Donna, all the time. I'm just never going to do it. So... Yeah. And the thing I loved about this episode too, and it seems like it happens a lot with the Disney Plus shows, whether it be the Star Wars or Marvel, is that a lot of times when questions pop up in the storyline, in one of the subsequent episodes, they sort of answer, or they take the viewer in their head. And so sometimes when he was just it was getting something explained to him, instead of washing it away, like wiping it away, he asked the question that it seems like most of the people doing chats about the first show were going like, oh, okay, now we understand it. Boom. That part of the conversation's done with. We don't have to worry about that. Let's get to some more of these other confusing, there's even some of the things that I'm a little unsure about, even though I know the Spectre character pretty well. But that's what I love about it, is that they're not giving you everything right away.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we talked about last week how smart it was to make it the Steven character, because he's so lovable and interesting and kind of normal. And the thing that I didn't realize when I was thinking about all that, obviously it's cool to have him as the point of view character because it's something different. He's not a badass. He's not, he's not the hero. He's the guy thrust into the situation. It's a fish out of water tale. But it also allows for that very easy exposition of the character who doesn't know what's going on and can just ask the questions very naturally. Can not even just naturally, but he can really struggle with the questions of what's going on. He's really invested and really needs to know what is happening with Mark Spector. Who is Mark? Why am I where I am? It's all very important to him, and he's asking those questions, and it really puts us in his chair, and I love that.
Right. And you got to think about it this way too, is that as far as we know, this character of Stephen Grant, up until a couple days before it, thought his life was just normal. He was a guy that worked at a gift shop at a museum. He had no idea at all about this other side of him.
Mm-hmm. I'm very interested in to see how it works between Mark and Stephen, and if they're going for based on knowing nothing about the comics, the way he said this with you were a corpse when I found you, you were nothing but a corpse when I found you, or something like that. It sounds to me almost like he seems to think that he says, Stephen, if I get this job finished, you'll never see me again.
I think it's alluding to the fact that he may not. I have a feeling, and this is just based off of what I'm watching, is that Stephen has sort of been a reaction to something that happened to him, because Mark was only able to come in, and this is we've seen, and I'm assuming that we've seen so far the parts in Stephen's life where Mark has come back, is because in the first episode, Mark, whenever he needed to, Mark was able to jump back in, and then that was when he blacked out. When he was fighting the guys in the bazaar and on the truck and stuff like that. In this episode, I think now that Stephen is in control and knows about Mark, he can't just unwillingly give control back to Mark. He has to let him. So now Mark even said it, the person that's in control has become stronger. With that being said, I think we're learning a lot more about who's going to end up being the dominant personality at the end. So when Mark said, when we're all done with this, you may never see me again, that could be, there's 3 levels to that statement, as far as, you won't be around anymore. I won't be around anymore. We won't be around anymore. Who knows? Because
it made it seem to me, as someone who knows nothing about it, that is this DID at all? You know what I mean? I'm curious, because it seems, obviously they've talked about it in interviews and stuff, how it is. And so I'm assuming it is, but the fact that he was a corpse when they met, it almost feels like Khonshu saved him and put him in this body with Steven almost. But I guess not. I don't know. It's all kind of up in the air for me as to where we are right now, without comics knowledge or whatever. It feels very I don't know. It could be that it isn't DID at all. It's something mystical, or did Steven exist prior to all the Khonshu or not? Was Steven an alternate? Is Steven the real owner of the body? Is Steven the passenger? Is Mark the passenger? Is there a passenger? Are they both? Have they had it since they were kids? Have they been alternating their whole lives? And I mean, Steven does seem to think all of Steven's experiences seem fairly new. So I wouldn't be even when he says, he's I can't go on a date. I can't, he says 3 things, and they're all things that we've seen on screen. So it's I can't go on a date. I can't keep my job. And there's one other thing. And it's and he says, you're the guy who's been, in the back of my mind, stealing my life from me. You're the parasite that's stealing my life from me,
Right.
I want Steven to be real. I don't want Steven to go away.
No, I mean, he is to describe him in a sense, he's a sad sack. but he is someone that is very, determined in a sense. Like he wants, like in the first episode when he understood what Donna said about him, not, if you think this is like an audition to be a tour guide, forget it. And he's like, oh, that's very hurtful. That's a hurtful thing. So he is not a confrontational type person. You see a whole different situation in this episode, especially when he decides to, when he summoned the Psycho Colonel Sanders suit, and then he decides, I could, he realized that he does have some power, which first off, I went from when they showed Mr. Knight, I screamed, and then he did that superhero pose and then fell over.
Yeah.
Like he couldn't handle it. And he's like, this should have hurt more than it did. So then he realized that he has some power in that suit too. So him just telling Mark, now I'm going to be able to do this. And he acts all, he's rolling his sleeves up and doing the boxing dancing. Like, I can take this. What do you call it? The plug ugly coyote?
Yeah.
So and then he realizes, nope, he can't do it. So, I think he's going to gain more confidence as the series goes on. What that ends up doing, we'll see.
I think so too. And I think that it's interesting. Mark's kind of encouraging to him, even though he wants the body back and thinks he still needs to be the one to take down this jackal. He says that's a really good punch, man. He gives him a little bit of encouragement. Yeah. Good job, bud.
Yeah. You can do it, but let me take over for now.
Yeah. And that's the thing is I think Mark believes maybe with the power of Khonshu, he could do it, but he's going to get someone hurt. There's too many people around.
Right. And he's very, very unexperienced with doing it. As you see that he almost takes that guy's car out when it runs into him in the jackal.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see a lot of fighting now with Mark being the in control, because you see that little scene at the end when they pan and you just see Steven for a second, and it's just I think he was in a mirror or something when they're in Egypt, and it's it's almost like he's trapped now. Mm-hmm. Where Mark was just being like, give me the control back, this will be fine. And then once he has the control back, he's like, I'm not giving it back now. Mark is the guy in control now. He has to do what he needs to do, because we know what the plot of the show is. We got to get that. We got to get the scarab back now from Arthur, because they don't want them to resurrect Amit, because that could be that's not going to be very good.
Mm-hmm.
So now there's actually a mission.
Yeah, the world. I wish you could see the world after we make it what it will be. Which I really enjoyed the fact that Arthur Harrow in this episode is so charismatic and believable. And as he's walking around, there's a real question of whether Steven's going to buy into what he's saying over what Mark's saying, it's such a fun thing. And there's that line that he says, I don't care how handsome you are. And that was a funny line, but it also is just because you look like me, just because you're coming from inside my brain doesn't mean you're right. And it's a real, I don't know, if he is a reaction, let's say he is some sort of reaction to some more recent trauma, and he's a more recent addition to Mark's psychology, right? Then what is he? What kind of reaction is he? And the way that he's questioning him, and the way he's trying to be a moral compass for him and just say you've gone too far, you're doing all this stuff, it's interesting that he's not just Steven, he also has this perspective on the situation, and he has he's giving a real pushback on Mark on the sort of mercenary ways that he's taken on in this service of Khonshu.
And I think Steven's gonna have a little bit more of a passenger role now, because it seems like he sees what's going on now when Mark is in control. So that's going to be more of, he's going to see all, instead of just, finding out about Mark from that constable, and then from just Mark telling him the stuff, with him being the passenger now, the passenger that can't be in control, he's going to see all this stuff. So I wonder how that's going to shape the character of Steven, whether it's going to make him see okay, we're doing this. Because Mark even tells him, he goes, I have to fulfill my job, and my job is basically, it's going to get my hands bloody. Mm-hmm. And Steven is completely against it, but now he's going to be that guy. This is the first time I think we're going to see him being that side, the guy that's the unwilling companion, see all this stuff. So that's going to probably change it might strengthen his perspective of being Mark Spector should not be in control ever again, or, he even said he's punishing the guys for Khonshu that deserve it. He's being the executioner. He's not being a prejudge. He's being someone that is, being tried and convicted of something that they did do, not like Amit that wants to judge and kill people for something that they might do. So we got 4 more episodes of this, so I'm excited, super excited.
Yeah, me too, man. You mentioned that, and it does seem that pretty clear that Khonshu has a better perspective than Amit, has a more just perspective than Amit. But that doesn't mean that Khonshu's right about everything, and it doesn't mean that Khonshu is going to treat Mark well. Because Khonshu does, like, that conversation with Mark seemed very abusive. He seemed very like, no, you belong to me. Like, and he's also like sort of gaslighting. He's like, I know you like all this stuff I have you do. You love it. We need each other, and like Mark is like, no, I want out. And Khonshu is like, hey, do you really though? Come on, buddy. Stick with me.
I got a little bit of a Darth Vader Return of the Jedi vibe for him then, when he's just like, well, if you're not going to do it, I know this other person who's near and dear to your heart that might do it if you don't want to. Like when Darth Vader is telling Luke, like, if you don't come to me, I'll get your sister. So it's sort of just like, that's another thing with gaslighting, is he's taking that extreme viewpoint of just like, well, if you don't give me what I want, I know someone that it's going to end up hurting you, but they could possibly give me what I want. It's up to you. If I make this decision because of your decision, then it's all on you. It's not on me. I mean, he totally was being the total gaslighting ass that he's like being depicted as. So
yeah.
He has Mark is basically the ends to his means. So, but like you were saying, is that his viewpoint on justice is a little more of what is common, is that, you're getting judged and tried for something you've already done. So not to say that he's going to do everything the right way. It's the end result is that, people are dying. So
yeah,
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, man. I really, really love it. I really love this episode. I really want more of what we got here. The Mr. Knight outfit is just amazing, just completely badass. And I thought, and I don't know anything if this is the way it is from comics, but based on the promotional materials, I'd seen that there were these at least two different versions of the Moonknight costume, and I was like, I was hoping it would be related to each alternate. Like each one would have his own version of Moonknight, that like made a lot of sense to me. I don't know. Is that way in the comics, or is that something they've added here?
I gotta temper what I'm going to say. Different personalities tend to have different suits they wear for the occasion they're using them in. So
okay, so
I'll keep it that way.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So yes, in a way that did it right the same way. So yeah,
that I liked that a lot. I liked it a lot. And yeah, just him in the suit. Then they call him a fancy drunk. It was just super good. Psycho Colonel Sanders. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, before I forget, that QR code that's on the number 43 locker, that's actually a good QR code. You could scan it and it'll take you somewhere pretty cool.
Okay, sweet. And there's one in the first episode too, right?
I don't remember seeing that one.
Okay, I saw an article that there was a QR code hidden in the episode, but I didn't look into it, honestly, yet. I haven't had time. But I was hoping to look into both of them this week. Maybe I'm wrong. The storage locker was a great scene. Man, what a great scene.
When he walks in there and looks at it, and he's just like, again, he keeps seeing things like, oh, this is real. Oh my God. And then he's like, oh, there he is again, the man in the mirror. I wonder when you were going to show back up. Just like,
I just love how they have these two very completely different perspectives on the situation, and they are so opposed to each other. I also had to note, like, I don't know when he met his wife. I don't know if that was before, Khonshu found him and brought him back to life. I don't know if it's like before Steven existed or what, but it seems to me, I was talking about, like, if your mind is creating this alternate, like, what does that alternate do, or why is it creating that alternate? And one of the reasons, I think, is this moral compass, this pushback on Mark. But I thought it was really interesting that he created Steven with so many traits of the wife. same favorite poet. They both had like the Egyptology connection. It was very interesting to me that like Steven might be his sort of like a representation of like traits in his wife that he needed in his partner, that like, or that he loved about his partner, ends up in this alternate, you know. That was kind of neat. I liked that a lot.
The one trait that he didn't give Steven, though, was the fact that Layla can kick some ass too.
Yes.
I mean, she did a job on a couple of those people in the little bazaars again when they were running away from Arthur. But Karen in the chat said that the QR code in the first episode was when he was talking to the little girl in the museum when she was putting trash into the pyramid.
Okay,
and she
sweet.
said, like, you know, she was alluding to the fact that Steven had died before, so there could be something there. So.
Yes, she did. There was a real illusion there. I don't know if we brought that up on the episode, but yeah, there was a definite moment in that first episode where she says something like, "What was it like to be in that?" And the way she asked it, she could mean, you know, like she could not mean him specifically, but it sounded, the way she asked it seemed, oh, does she mean he's been dead before? And in this episode, we find out that he has. So,
yep. At least the character of Mark has. And so again, the thing I love about the MCU was when they take enough stuff where you could figure out what's going on in a sense from having prior knowledge to it, but then they just keep throwing you curveballs and it's awesome. Just love it. Yeah. You know, just.
I love, you know, there's a moment where Haro says, talking about this staff and he's about to summon the jackal, and he says, "I don't want to use it." And he just says, "Then don't."
Right.
And I love that because Mark Spector is this character who seems to be trapped into doing all these things he's doing. And Steven just has this clear principle of like, you don't do a thing if it's not right, or you don't want to do it. Like, don't let anyone force you into saying Layla's name. Don't let anyone force you into becoming Moonknight. Don't let anyone force you into turning over the power. You know what I mean? Turning over the body. Like, he refuses to be used by others, and that's something that Mark doesn't have. I just think it's very interesting. If Mark is the original and Steven is the alternate, all these things about Steven that are very specific to like Mark's situation and things that Mark doesn't have or kind of needs or whatever. I think that's fascinating.
Oh yeah, Steven definitely was the guy that was just not taking Arthur's. I mean, he's got the cult leader mentality and approach on stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's very, you know, just making it seem like he's all about peace and love, like with him talking about how all these tomatoes were great and, you know, the food stuff and it's free and, you know, we treat it, but the whole time it's just like, because they've been programmed, you program them that way. And he's just like, no, you know, don't use it, you know, don't prejudge. When he asked everyone, he's like, are you guys all for child murder? Mm-hmm. Like, and they just didn't, you know, he was just like, no, how can you guys not see that this is so wrong?
Yeah. He says, you're all into that killing children.
Yes.
just so, oh gosh. And what really, at that point, it's kind of like, is Haro for real? Like, is Ahmet really wanting what's good for everyone and really just trying to take bad apples out of the bunch, you know? And maybe that is a pure desire. But then there's a moment in this episode when I think the game is given away, which is when he meets that homeless man on the street and he says, hey, you've got my scarab. That's mine. I can give you food. I can give you a place to stay. I can give you all that, but I cannot give you this. And he takes the scarab back, and then he grabs his hand and uses Ahmet's power to kill him without using the staff to weigh him, without using his tattoo or whatever. And it just seems that he's like, yeah, Ahmet, he says he's all about killing people who are just versus not just or whatever, but like, he killed that guy for no reason, you know?
Right. There is definitely the face that you see of him that is the public persona, which is the, you know, the cult leader type guy who shows that he does everything for the reason of Ahmet's justice. But in that case, you just see that he just flat out killed the guy.
Yeah.
So that's, because he doesn't think, I mean, he sees Layla on the scooter, but it's just sort of like, yeah, doesn't matter. So. Yeah. The one thing I also want to bring up about this show too is that in all of this complexity and who's going to be what, there have been a lot of just laugh out loud moments too.
Oh,
This
so
show
many.
does throw when him and Layla are running away and he turns around, he's like, "Oh, great, I'm gonna die in an evil magician's man cave." And he's saying it so flat and just
Yep.
so like matter of factly, but you know that, and you're like, "Oh, that's just it's it breaks the tension in a situation to where you're like, all right," but then you realize that there's still, especially from the fact is that later on there's enough comic relief and physical humor when you realize that he's the only one that can see the jackals. And so that fight scene with him, and it's like he has to, again, I'll say this every time we talk about it, Oscar Isaac is a freaking treasure. That guy.
100%.
I mean, he's just been fantastic. I mean, I love the casting when they announced it, but now it's just showing like, man, this is just MCU is so the casting director is so good at casting the right people. But just the way that he's doing these fight scenes, when you could tell it's just him, he might be fighting against something with the green screen that gets blacked out later, but it's just the way that he's dealing with it is, I mean, even when he decides, he's like, nah, I'm not going to let you take over, and he tries to take over, there's a lot of comic elements in that fight scene too. He's like, oh, I got this. And then he just gets whacked and then gets thrown into the street and stuff like that.
I love that so much when he's like, I don't think you can handle this. And he's like, I think I can.
Yeah. Like, let me see, And it was all this, that little moment when he grabbed the fender of the car and realized that, oh man, I got some strength in me now. What's this? I got this new power. And it's like, oh, I can finally, fight back because I'm not just this little sad sack on the side that, lets me be in like a whipping post for everyone else. So, man,
yeah,
cannot wait.
It's so good. I really enjoyed the scene between him and Layla in the apartment, and Steven and Layla. I love when they're arguing, and there's just a lot of interesting character development for Layla in that scene that I really liked. I like when he's telling her how amazing she is. And she's like sort of starting to believe this Steven persona is real, but she's really pushing back. She's been pushing back and pushing back. But then he tells her how amazing she is, and you see for a second like the walls fall down, and then it's almost like the reaction to the walls falling down inside of her is to throw them back up even harder, and she steps away and she's like, I'm not buying it. This is crazy. No. Like, and she walks away, and then that's when she brings the divorce papers out. It's like almost like him crossing the line of giving her such a sweet compliment of how amazing she is just like too far for her. She can't believe that he would be that sweet. And that's, I don't know. It's fascinating. And then he says, I'd never divorce you.
No, but the way she defends it, like she starts feeling it, then all of a sudden she does that, but she emphasizes Mark. She says Mark because she realizes that he's still Mark. This Steven guy is not the person that she knows in a sense, because she's like, stop that accent. Why are you talking like that? How come, she's still throwing back the fact that she thinks that this is just the game that Mark is playing, and she's not going to get fooled, into it. So, I'm just, again, more things are coming up that you just want to see how is this going to, how is this going to factor into it? And just, wow.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Love it.
Me too, man. Yeah, and in that scene, I love the moment where he says, "You seem great, but Mark is a right twit," and he looks over at the mirror and sees Mark, and Mark looks like crestfallen, like, yeah, he has a point, like I'm the worst, and it's just Right. I love the very small bits of character development. They've really spent a lot of time with Steven, but I like that such little moments with Mark and Layla are building their characters out in big ways.
Oh yeah, I just like that there's going to just be this, I don't know, just development between them, because you can see that she even, when they finally get that point when they're in the evil magician's man cave, and she's just like, you got to summon a suit. I believe you, Steven.
Yep.
And she calls him Steven, and that's when the jackal comes and knocks him out the window, and then that's when Conchu's yelling at him again, you idiot, summon a suit. Yeah, that whole scene too, like, soup? Summon the soup? What are you talking about, soup? Like, no, the suit, It's this, you're getting this tenseness, and then all of a sudden, boom, here's some jokes that are popping up, and it cuts it, but then you're right back into it. So it works so brilliant.
I love it as he's falling, he just yells the word suit. And it's just very funny to me because there's a lot of like magic words you could say in that moment, like I summon the power of Khonshu. There's a lot of cool, like, you know, He-Man-esque moments you could have there, and him just yelling, exactly. Him just yelling "suit" as he's falling and hits that bar. It's so funny. So good. The last one I have written down here, and this is just terrifying, is the idea that how horrible it is to be on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Steven talks about how horrible it is. He's like, "How long have you been doing this? How can I can't move?" And Mark's like, "A long time."
Yeah, and he even says he's like, just get comfortable and just, you know,
breathe through it.
Now that you're aware of this is going on, it's gonna be something you got to get used to, and I think we're gonna get used to it. Or he's gonna have to get used to it in a big way coming forward, because Mark is like, he's the guy that thinks that he can be the one that has to be in charge to be able to fulfill and stop everything that's unfolding right now.
Yeah. I don't know though, man. This show has been so focused on Steven. I feel like, I know we're going to get more Mark here going forward, but I feel like Steven's still going to be like the protagonist, and I really want more Steven. I want Steven to like,
oh yeah,
I want Mr. Knight to be the one who takes down Ahmet, you know, like I really want Steven to like come into the powers as a servant of Khonshu, and his sort of clear moral character be a servant in a way that maybe Mark can't be, you know?
I think we'll see that too, especially with the fact that they're both aware and able to communicate now when the other one is in charge. You'll see him anytime there's a reflective surface, there's going to be some ways of Steven coming back and saying, like, giving him an earful or saying, you know, trying to be the angel on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Whereas Mark was sort of like the devil on Steven's shoulder. I think they're going to end up building each other up in that way.
Yeah, I agreed. I think they're going to become a team for sure. Like the two of them sort of are beginning to combine forces and work together. Well, they're not yet, but I think they will. And the last moment though is it's so sad when you see the mirror and it's been covered up and like the sheet falls off the mirror and you see Steven and Mark just said the reflections help. You know, the reflections help while you're in there. The reflections really do help you get through it. And he's got all the mirrors covered, you know, like that's so sadistic in a way to knowing that he's trapping Steven inside, and he covers the mirrors, and then the thing falls off and it just shows Steven and they're just holding a pillow, just really, really like almost in a upright fetal position kind of thing. And then it cuts to Mark and he's just sitting there, looks over at him sort of disgusted and just continues to drink. It's just, man, it's real good. Cannot wait.
It's almost like the characters are being played by two different actors because they are so different. And it's just
for sure.
Just again, this how amazing. I'm going to keep saying it. And, you know, if you have a problem with me talking about how much I love Oscar Isaac in this, you can just send an email to them. And I'm sure that no one out there is going to be like, oh, Oscar Isaac's terrible in this.
Dude, Oscar Isaac is amazing in this show. Like, for real. I'm absolutely loving it.
Oh. And if you love to see, I mean, there's a movie he was in probably, it's got to be close to 10 years ago now, called Ex Machina.
Yeah, no, I've seen it.
Oh my God, he was so good in that.
Great. Really,
you know,
really
just
great.
there's only three characters, and I think about it, like all three of those actors have gone on to become like major characters, because Alicia Vikander, the one that played the robot, was Laura Croft, and then the other guy was I can't even think of it now. He was General Hux in the Star Wars sequel trilogy.
Oh, nice.
So it was, you know, because that movie only basically had like those three characters in it the whole time.
Yeah, it's just a three-hander basically. Yeah, it's great. Okay, we got a bunch of feedback from the live chat here. Let's see what everybody else is saying about this. We got Court OB says, wanted to point out that beautiful shot of Moonknight running across the skyline with the moon in the background. Wish it was longer. Yes, couldn't agree more, Court. And what I loved about that shot is the fact that the moon is reflected in the water before you see it in the sky. So you see the moon on the water, and as the camera kind of pans up, it's just really pretty. Like the symmetry of that scene is so cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah,
and that moon was huge in the sky too.
God of the moon, man, he's got to be.
Yep.
All right, Zally G in the chat says, if we never see Mark's perspective of episode 1, that's fine by me. I'd rather continue on with the story than go back and use an episode to explain Mark's part. I agree. I think there's obviously room for them to do some cool stuff where like something we didn't see in an earlier episode or something Steven did or something Mark did that we didn't see could be interesting to show. But like, yeah, I don't think it's in any way necessary. I really, really don't. I think that we've really gone beyond the need of it at this point. And I think it's such a smarter thing to keep the story moving forward.
Right. It was basically just to show his abilities as how he was able to just like beat everybody else up. But I think too is the fact that we also have to keep in mind that thing's only 6 episodes long.
Mm-hmm.
So it is like basically it's like we're getting an elongated movie. So it's not like I've seen people say like, oh, the Disney Plus things are weird because they're not like 13 episodes or 22 episodes. It's like, yeah, but these are basically, I mean, could you imagine? Because they were saying that the budget on each one of these things, it ends up being for like 3 hours or 3 episodes is the equivalent of a movie. Mm-hmm. Because there's so much. If you get 2 hours of film time, it's like a 2-hour movie. So there's $7,500 million popped into it, and you can tell because these things look. I mean, nothing in it looks terrible. So
no, it doesn't look in any way lesser than the rest of the MCU. You know, it's really really great. Okay, let's see. Up next, we got Fear Milner. Again, welcome. One of our patrons, I believe, says after this episode, is anybody else super invested in Khonshu and his past with avatars and Arthur Harrow and his past? I would love to know what led Arthur to leave Khonshu's side. I mean, I'm really invested to see who Khonshu really is. Like, this show is the story of Moonknight is a story of him being the avatar for Khonshu. That's where he derives his power. That's where he gets his missions. And if Khonshu is not actually a good dude, then I don't know, this thing can kind of fall apart. But at the same time, like, I'm really questioning his, like, Arthur seems to have a point, basically.
Right. And the thing I got to think too is like, I didn't know, and it was a revelation too, because I think the Arthur Harrow character is something that's pretty much whole cloth a new character. But with him saying that he used to be Khonshu's avatar, but then he's telling Mark, oh, did he promise you that he'd let you go after this mission? Yeah, he lies. He doesn't do that. Mm-hmm. How did he get away from Khonshu then? And how did he become Amit's avatar? Because obviously it seems like Amit and Khonshu don't get along. I think the little girl even explained it. It was like they basically like kicked her out, and they weren't like, one of them was chastised and sort of just like not part of it, and so they're not all friendly with each other. But how is he able to leave the service of Khonshu to be, just and not die from it? So you should see.
Yeah.
And I hope Khonshu does not end up being Mephisto, because that would just be
right.
too heavy-handed, I guess.
Yeah, a little too much Mephisto.
Yeah.
Hera JK says, loving Steven's awkward everyman. Agreed, 100%. Mm-hmm. Love it.
Yeah, I saw so many people say that the first episode it was hard for them to watch because it was so cringy watching Steven, his character basically being just walked over and all this other stuff. But I'm like, that just shows you how good of an actor Oscar Isaac is to portray this, but then also give you that sense of like, oh man, the situations he's in, I would not want to be in, especially again when that guy kept calling him Scotty today, and he's like, no, I'm Steven, here's who I am. So it's just like, I don't know, but yeah, he is definitely just sort of like he's playing up the fact, and we're seeing that he is a very much an underdog character. Mm-hmm. And so you have you basically want to root for those guys.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right, here JK also says, I feel like Steven was born the day Khonshu saved him. That seems like a definite possibility. Faux show.
That could be part of his, way that he is reacting to the fact is that he, is doing all this stuff for Khonshu now, that he may have developed that personality as sort of a, just a safeguard and escape, because it just showed it had to have been for a while that he had no idea that. I mean, I guess he knew that something was going on. Steven did, because he says he has a sleeping disorder and he tied himself down and, put the sand out there. And he said, what in the first episode, hey, there's some days where I wake up and I feel like I did 10,000 steps already.
Yeah.
So
Feels
Mark
like
was
you got hit
taking
by a
over.
bus or stuff. Yeah.
Yes. So Mark was taking over. And I just think it was recently that it was a situation where he, woke up and he was in the middle of that field. Might have been the first time where Mark was not fully in control all the way into the point when he went back to the flat.
Went back to Steven. And I'm really curious about what drives that. Because it seems like the worst time to switch to Steven. So clearly he's not in control.
No. And
Khonshu doesn't want him switching. So what is causing him to switch to Steven there? It's interesting. Could it be that he's just breaking down and there's just, because he says the person in control has more power now. But in those cases, it seemed like that's not the case for Mark.
No, because even Arthur said, he goes, you think Khonshu selected you because your mind was easy to break, or it was because it was already broken? And Steven's like, I'm not broken. I think that they're going to lean into the fact that Mark had DID before this, in a sense, and that now Steven, after the fact, when everything is coming to a head, is sort of like and Karen in the chat even said this is he's a coping mechanism. It's a way that he can deal with this. Like he said, Steven's personalities mirror a lot of what Layla's was. So it was built from something instead of just being like a whole new, I don't know where this thing came from. So a lot of times in the comics, he gets a personality and it's like, why does he have that? It makes no sense. And then it serves a purpose and then it's gone. So I think this one is going to be a little more personal for him.
On that point, Hera says, also the interesting part is that Steven knew everything Layla knew. So it's not just that, he was similar in certain traits and had but he also seems to know all these things like French, Egyptian, hieroglyphs, all the poetry that he has memorized because she had it memorized. So that doesn't seem like a normal DID thing. I feel like maybe the fact that he can actually know all these things she knows feels like a different thing. Could the powers of Khonshu be aiding in that, or has he had enough time to build in those personality traits, or at least that knowledge base as Steven?
Right.
It's also really interesting. I'm really interested in the mother because clearly something's going on with the mother.
I don't think the mother for Steven exists.
I agree.
He's leaving her a message.
Yep. Every time we've heard him talk to her, he's leaving a message. There's also the moment in this episode where he says, "This is my mom's flat." So that just doesn't add up. So if it's your mom's flat, then where is she? So most people say, "Oh, she probably left it to him." Okay, but if it's your mom's flat and she left it to you, then why are you calling her every day, right? That was where my mind went. And I'm something is absolutely up with the mother. I thought that in the first episode. In this episode, it seems even more clear.
And even when he tells that to Layla, she's like, "Oh, so you're talking again, or you guys have made up?" And Steven's like, "Yeah." He says, "Yeah," but so I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely going to be some kind of. I mean, obviously, it's got to be something because. Otherwise, how did he get the flat? How is there all that stuff in there? How is, it could be, maybe it's Mark does it all. I mean, yeah, I guess that's true because Mark does have control and he comes back when Steven. So I think Mark could be the mother. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's what I'm thinking. My thought is if he's leaving messages telling someone about his day every day and he's describing it in this voicemail, my thought is Mark is somehow receiving those messages and then using them as it's almost like he's reading Steven's diary every day to be okay, what is Steven doing when I'm asleep, Right. That's what I'm thinking.
Because at that time we didn't know if they had a knowledge of what the other person was doing when they were in control, which now it seems like they do. So.
Ooh, Greggy Poo says, he also says later Gators, connection to Amit.
Could be because a lot of the stuff that does, and again, he will know about Amit and he already knew all that stuff too. Like he was talking about how when the banners on the museum were wrong, that has to be the knowledge that was probably implanted into him from when the whole Layla side, because she was big into the Egyptology. So
right.
I think later Gators probably does have something to do with that.
I think it's very possible. All right. Well, that's about all I got, and that's all the feedback we had in the chat. So I'm torn. A couple things we derailed and stopped derailing because of comic knowledge. Do we want to do a comic section? I'm like torn because I don't know if I want to know.
I think it's, if you know, you can. I was going to say that Ianders0N in the chat says that he was asking about if Steven and Mark would be able to instantaneously switch between identities, like during interrogations, fights, and whatever. And then he writes, I'm a big comics guy, but actually never got into Moonknight. And I swear I will listen to the Source Pages episodes after the series is done. LOL. Mm-hmm. So we did talk about some of the stuff. I mean, it's the personalities are a whole different ballgame in the comics so far. I like the way that they're working on it, but I do have to I will try my hardest next week to temper my alluding to stuff from what I know about it already, especially because it doesn't seem like all of it is going to be coming to fruition, but enough of it is, or enough of the general concepts are. So yeah, I think we'll just keep if you want to know more, you can listen to, we have the 3 episodes that we did on that already, the Jeff Lemire run, which they are taking. The main thing was the character design of Khonshu is basically straight lifted from that run. I mean, just the way that he's designed with it basically looks like a vulture skull head with the elongated beak and stuff like that is pretty cool. Like I said, when I saw that first time, I'm like, oh my God, it looks so cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, so, dude, it's rad, man. I am very excited about the show and how it's going so far. It's just, like you said, Oscar Isaac, absolute treasure. Totally wonderful. And I can't wait to see what happens next. We will be back, you guys, soon. And yes, go to Source Pages. Check it out. That's BVK's show. Brian V. Klein, the guy who I've been talking to this whole time. His right here on the Stranded Panda Network. Go to Source Pages. They have been covering... What else are you guys covering now? You did a 3-episode Moonknight coverage?
We did 3-episode Moonknight. We did of the latest Morbius run, and then our latest episode is the review in comparison to the movie. We've got another episode that we got coming up where we're doing the Avengers from 2018. That's 32 through 37. It's called The Age of Khonshu. It's going to be a cool run. If you want to read that, it's pretty cool because it's pretty much Moon Knight gets the powers of everybody for a purpose, and then it goes from there. And then we've got stuff coming up. We're going to be doing a bunch of coverage for Multiverse of Madness. We're going to do a whole episode on who is America Chavez, because she is obviously going to be a big player in the multiverse thing. And she's been in the trailers for Multiverse of Madness. It's been the most difficult run of trying to figure out what comics we're going to cover. If people don't know about what the show is, we basically do primers and continuations and source material for movies and TV shows of comic books and novels. And we don't know much about Multiverse of Madness. So we're just like, all right, we're going to do a latest run of Doctor Strange. It's a Jason Aaron run, I think, and America Chavez. And after that, we're going to cover more stuff after the fact, because beforehand, I have no idea. And I really don't want to know. Someone was like, oh, there's a little 30-second teaser it dropped for Multiverse of Madness. And I'm like, I don't want to see it anymore. I don't want to know if this person pops up or doesn't pop up. And so, but yeah, we're on the network. Check us out on strandedpanda.com. There's a whole bunch of other cool shows on there. And, we're just thankful for Matt and Jeff and everyone at the MCU cast for supporting us and having us on the network and just, getting the good word out there. We get to talk about reading comics and novels, which I do anyway. So
yeah, man, dude, we're so happy to have you on the network, for real. It's great, and it's such a great companion piece to what we do and what so many other people on the network do. Star Wars and Star Trek, whatever, all the Morbius stuff. I'd actually love to talk to you about Morbius, because I know you hated it, right?
I did not like it at all.
You did not like it. I liked it. I gotta say, I liked it. I don't know anything about the comics, so it has nothing to do with that. Well, but I thought it was pretty good.
Neither did I. I wanted to love it so much because, as you know, I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, and I loved Matt Smith.
Yeah, me too.
He was great in it, and there was a lot of positives of it, but a lot of times in the movie, I was going, what is going on? I was basically just like, there was a lot of stuff that was left on the cutting room floor and edited out, and it was just like, okay. So, I mean, it wasn't terrible.
There were definitely some moments that I felt like maybe they got poorly reviewed or something by test audiences or something. Like there's a scene, and this is not a big spoiler, it's the very beginning of the movie. He's walking up to a big speech, and it should be a pivotal moment for his character, and they just cut away from it, and then they say what happens in the next scene, and I was like, surely they shot that scene. Like, it's clearly a big moment for his character. It should be a big thing to show us who he is, and they just cut it. And I got to imagine people just didn't like the scene or something, and I'm just like, that would have been a great scene, and it's just not in there. There's definitely some problems. I'll definitely admit that, but I just think it wasn't nearly worth all the hate that everyone gave it. Like, it got really piled on the online.
Right. And it also did have the most pointless mid-credit, after-credit scenes I've ever seen. Like, there's no reasons for those to be there, because it was just like, it broke the rules that they already established and some other stuff. And then it's like,
right.
Why? Well, okay. Well, it's Sony. It's Sony being Sony, I think.
I think you're right. I think it's Sony not caring as much about what Marvel has established. And I think that those post-credit, the post-credit sequence, I said this on our review, which actually, I said this in the one that's already out. We got another review. We got a full review coming out probably in the next couple of days, because we had so many things to drop in the feed that, like, the Morbius is getting a little chopped up. But Moonknight was more important, so we put off the full Morbius review. It's going to drop in a couple of days. But yeah, like, it was the first time I've seen post-credit sequence in a Marvel movie that, like, made me less excited leaving the theater. Like, it really did. Right. The whole point of those things is to make you go like make your heart jump out of your chest and be so excited for the next thing. And it just feels like, hey, we're forcing a thing to happen.
This was very hand wavy, very just like, and even the dialogue between the people that were in it was just like, no. All right, well, okay.
Yep.
You know, so
yep.
Anyways, but it's so great that we still have Moonknight that we're talking about and watching.
Absolutely.
Really
absolutely.
Good. And it seems like everyone except for Forbes.com loves the show. So Forbes.com gave it a super bad review of the whole series. Just like, I think this guy just doesn't like superhero stuff, because he gave bad review to Far From Home and pretty much every, I don't think this guy should be a movie critic, but it's actually kind of funny to read his descriptions on why he doesn't like stuff. And it's like, that is okay. Well, some people just don't like some things. So
weird. We have a question real quick before we get out of here. Waterfall Angel asked in the chat, is trivia happening tomorrow? Apparently not. I just found this out. I asked them. I asked Jeff a minute ago if we can do it. He's having a computer issue, and he cannot set up the bot for tomorrow. So if you're listening to this, check with the Stranded Panda chat though. We may try to do something else other than trivia tomorrow, because I was really excited to see everybody. We missed doing something in March completely, and in April we were planning to do this April for the first week in April to make up for last month missing out on trivia. And yeah, so Thursday, if you're listening to this and it's Thursday, I'm planning to do something tomorrow night, but I have not fully decided what, because trivia, we just found out trivia can't happen. So we'll, if nothing else, we'll get on there. I'll stream a little music, get some people in a Zoom call, and we'll go play a board game or something. So come hang out in the Stranded Panda. Come to Twitch tomorrow night, Thursday night, Stranded Panda TV on Twitch, and we'll be there doing something. Maybe I'll try my popcorn panels. Have I ever told you about that, BVK?
No.
I have this idea I really like, and it's just like, draw a discussion topic out of a hat and then let people join in the Zoom, and then talk, only let in 2 or 3 people, and basically do an impromptu 5-minute podcast on that subject. And let everybody bounce it around. Popcorn panels, as in just really impromptu panels about some topic. It could be anything, geek related or whatever.
It'll be like the one year I was on debate team in high school.
Oh yeah.
Here's a topic. It's always fun, especially when they give you the topic of something that you're so for, and they're like, well, you have to be the anti guy, the against guy. Okay, let me see how I could do that. So yeah, those are always fun. Yeah,
I think it could be fun. It's been an idea for a long time. So maybe I'll take tomorrow as an opportunity, but I need to get people to send me topics. So maybe I'll check the Stranded Panda chat. We will do something tomorrow. All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you for being here, BVK.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I don't know if I mentioned this. I also wanted to thank Haley Hobbs, who is my partner on Source Pages. She's the one that usually cultivates all of the topics or the comics that we read, and she also handles all of our socials, so the Instagram that we're on and the Twitter and stuff like that. She does all that because she's really good at it. And
That's
I
awesome.
love her, and we wouldn't be where we were at without her. I could just, another shameless plug. Last Wednesday, Thursday, we had our 2 biggest download days we've ever had.
Dude, that's great.
And
that's
she
huge.
even said that our socials are getting so much more like likes and follows the last week. It was ridiculous. I looked at the Spreaker numbers and it was like they jumped, and I'm like, holy cow. Like,
that's awesome, dude.
I think a lot of it too does is, especially we did if you do like a Moonknight primer podcast on Google, ours pops up first for some reason now.
Oh, so it's like, that's awesome.
Like, that's cool. That gives us a lot of traffic. So
that's huge, man.
And people are saying, like Karen on the chat says that the Moonknight episodes on Sports Pages are her favorite so far. So thank you, Karen. We appreciate anyone that's listening to us. And we have fun doing it. So it's a fun show, and we don't take it too seriously, but we take it seriously enough to where we'll have a good enough discussion. I would suggest that if, like someone on the chat said too, is like probably don't listen to those episodes until Moonknight's done, because it could skew a little bit of your viewing of it with knowing somewhat of the comic past if you don't want to know any of that beforehand.
Yeah, it just depends on what your proclivities are. If you're the kind of person who really doesn't like spoiling, they're great for after. If you're the kind of person who wants to know everything before a show happens, they're there. And I love the idea of being able to listen beforehand. I think it adds depth to watching the shows. But I'm the kind of person who doesn't want to know anything. I really like being surprised, so I don't listen till after most of the time.
I think our primer that we're going to have doing coming up of the Who is America Chavez will be good beforehand, because it'll give you the little bit of a rundown of what she can do and why she is important to be in the MCU going forward. So
yeah, man, absolutely. Yep. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We are the Marvel Cinematic Universe Podcast. We'll be back actually like tomorrow or the next day with a Morbius review, a full Morbius review, and then next week with more Moon Knight. So many things happening in the Marvelverse. Send us your feedback at mcucast@gmail.com, and we'll get you on that feedback episode. Peace.
Till next time, true believers.
Thank you for joining us for the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, available everywhere you get podcasts, and now a video version streaming live on twitch.tv/strandedpandatv and available at youtube.com/strandedpanda. And if you'd like to learn more about all of our other podcasts, geeky projects, and ways to support the network, visit strandedpanda.com.